Grace Mitchell pressed her palms against her worn jeans as she stood outside the towering iron gates of the Stone mansion. The autumn wind carried the scent of freshly cut grass and expensive perfume from somewhere beyond the walls. She had been through 12 job interviews in the past month, each one ending with the same apologetic smile and the promise of a call that never came. This time had to be different. Oliver squeezed her hand 3 times, their secret signal for courage. His backpack hung loose on his small shoulders, filled with coloring books and the stuffed elephant he refused to leave behind. Grace looked down at his bright eyes and felt her resolve strengthen. She was doing this for him, for their future, for the chance at something better than their cramped studio apartment with the leaking ceiling. The intercom buzzed. Before she could announce herself, a crisp voice cut through the static. "Miss Mitchell, you are expected. Please proceed to the main entrance." The gates swung open with a mechanical hum, revealing a driveway lined with manicured hedges and flowering gardens that seemed to stretch endlessly. Oliver gasped, his grip on her hand loosening as he took in the sight of the 3-story mansion with its stone columns and arched windows that gleamed in the morning light. Margaret Foster met them at the door, her silver hair pulled back into an elegant knot. She wore a tailored navy suit and carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of running a household like a well-oiled machine. Her expression remained neutral as she assessed Grace from head to toe, then glanced down at Oliver with what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Mr. Stone will see you in the library." She stepped aside, allowing them entry into a foyer with marble floors that reflected the light from a crystal chandelier overhead. "Please follow me and ensure the child remains quiet." The library smelled of leather and old paper, walls lined with books that reached toward a ceiling painted with scenes of clouds and angels. Grace had never seen so many books outside of the public library where she sometimes took Oliver on Saturday afternoons. A fireplace crackled in the corner, casting dancing shadows across the Persian rug. Nathaniel Stone sat in his motorized wheelchair near the window, silhouetted against the morning light. He did not turn when they entered, his attention fixed on something in the garden beyond. Grace noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers gripped the armrests of his chair with barely controlled force. "You come highly recommended by the agency." His voice was measured, carefully controlled, "though I must say your resume is considerably different from what I typically require." Grace straightened her spine. "I understand this position requires more than standard caregiving. I have experience in physical therapy assistance, medication management, and household coordination. I learn quickly, Mr. Stone, and I do not quit when things become challenging." He turned then, and Grace found herself looking into eyes that held equal parts intelligence and pain. Nathaniel Stone was younger than she had expected, his features sharp and handsome despite the shadows beneath his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his clothing expensive but understated. Everything about him screamed control except for those eyes, which betrayed a profound weariness. The last 4 caregivers lasted an average of 3 weeks. His gaze shifted to Oliver, who stood perfectly still beside his mother, taking in every detail of the room with wonder. "Your son will need supervision during working hours. I have arrangements with a neighbor for after-school care. Oliver is very independent for his age." Grace felt her heart hammering against her ribs. She could not afford to lose this opportunity before it even began. Oliver stepped forward, his voice small but clear. "Sir, is it hard to move around in that chair?" Grace felt the blood drain from her face. "Oliver, that is not appropriate." But Nathaniel did something unexpected. He laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise even him. It cut through the tension in the room like sunlight through storm clouds. "The chair is actually the easy part, kid. It goes where I tell it to go without argument, which is more than I can say for most people in my life." Oliver considered this seriously. "My mom says when things are hard, we just have to find a different way to do them. She says being stuck is only in your mind, not your body." The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken things. Nathaniel stared at the child with an expression Grace could not read, something between pain and curiosity flickering across his features. Finally, he turned back to Grace. "The position requires living on the premises 5 days a week. There is a cottage on the grounds with 2 bedrooms. You would have weekends free, unless there is an emergency. The salary is considerable, health insurance included, and there is a discretionary fund for your son's education and needs. Grace felt tears prick at her eyes, but refused to let them fall. That is extraordinarily generous, Mr. Stone. It is practical. He maneuvered his wheelchair closer, the motor a soft whisper against the quiet of the library. I require someone reliable who will not treat me like I am made of glass or deserving of pity. I need assistance, not sympathy. Can you manage that distinction, Miss Mitchell? I believe I can, sir. He studied her for a long moment, then glanced at Oliver again. The boy had wandered over to a shelf of books, his fingers trailing along the spines with reverence. Your son seems to have a gift for honesty. He has not learned to be anything else yet. Grace watched her son with pride and fear mingled together. The world had not yet taught him to hide his thoughts behind polite masks. Good. Nathaniel pressed a button on his chair, and Margaret appeared in the doorway as if summoned by magic. Mrs. Foster will show you the cottage and review your duties. You start tomorrow at 6 in the morning. Do not be late, Miss Mitchell. I value punctuality above almost everything else. As Margaret led them through the mansion toward the back gardens, Oliver whispered to his mother, "He seems lonely, Mommy, like he forgot how to smile properly." Grace squeezed his hand 3 times, their signal passing between them. Maybe we can help him remember, baby. Maybe we can help him remember. The cottage sat nestled between ancient oak trees, its stone exterior covered in climbing ivy that had turned brilliant shades of red and gold with the changing season. Grace stood in the doorway of what would be their new home, hardly believing the space before her eyes. 2 bedrooms with actual doors, a kitchen with appliances that worked, a bathroom with hot water that came instantly from the tap. Oliver ran from room to room, his laughter echoing off walls that did not crack or peel. "Mommy, look." He pressed his face against the bedroom window. "I can see the whole garden from here. There are ducks in the pond." Grace joined him at the window, wrapping her arms around his small frame. This place felt like a dream, the kind she had stopped allowing herself to have somewhere between the 3rd eviction notice and the last time. She had chosen between groceries and medicine for Oliver's asthma. Now, standing in this cottage that would be theirs, she felt the weight of years of struggle begin to lift, just slightly. From her shoulders, the first morning came faster than she expected. At 5:30, Grace woke to darkness and the sound of rain against the windows. She dressed quietly, checking on Oliver, who slept peacefully in his new bed, surrounded by the few toys they owned. Margaret had arranged for a tutor to homeschool him in the mornings and promised afternoon activities with the gardener's grandchildren who sometimes visited the estate. The main house loomed against the gray sky as Grace hurried up the path. Her jacket pulled tight against the October chill. She let herself in through the side entrance, as instructed, climbing the servant stairs to the 2nd floor where Nathaniel's private rooms occupied the entire east wing. She knocked softly on his bedroom door at precisely 6 o'clock. No response came. She knocked again, louder this time, remembering his emphasis on punctuality. Still nothing. Grace hesitated, her hand on the doorknob, then pushed it open. Nathaniel lay tangled in his sheets, his face pale and twisted with pain. His wheelchair sat just beyond reach, and she could see he had tried to get to it during the night. Medication bottles lined the nightstand, and the room smelled of sweat and frustration. "Mr. Stone." Grace moved quickly to his side, professional instincts taking over. "Are you in pain? Do you need your medication?" His eyes opened, focusing on her with difficulty. The look he gave her was pure fury mixed with humiliation. "Get out. I cannot do that, sir." She reached for the medication bottles, checking labels and dosages. "When was your last pain management dose?" "I said get out." His voice cracked with the effort. "I do not need your help. I do not need anyone's help." Grace met his gaze steadily, refusing to flinch. "You hired me to assist you, Mr. Stone. That includes moments like this. Now, you can either accept help with dignity, or you can continue suffering alone because of pride. Your choice." Something in her tone, the matter-of-fact delivery without pity or judgment, seemed to deflate his anger. He closed his eyes, jaw clenched. The white pills. 2 of them. And I need help getting to the chair. Grace worked efficiently, helping him with his medication first, then carefully assisting him into the wheelchair. She had done this type of work before, in nursing homes and with elderly clients, but never with someone so young, so full of barely contained rage at his circumstances. His muscles were tight with pain. She could feel him trembling with the effort of maintaining control. When he was finally settled in his chair, she stepped back. "Would you like breakfast in your room or the dining room, Mr. Stone?" He stared at her, seeming to search for something in her expression. "Why are you not running away?" The others did after nights like this. They could not handle seeing me like this. Grace straightened the bedding with practiced movements. "Because this is my job, Mr. Stone, and because pain is just pain, it does not make you less of a person. It just makes you human." Something shifted in his expression, the walls he had built around himself developing the first small crack. "The dining room. And please, call me Nathaniel. Mr. Stone was my father." Over the following weeks, a routine developed between them. Grace learned the rhythm of his good days and bad ones, when to push and when to simply be present. She administered medications, helped with physical therapy exercises, managed his schedule, and maintained the careful balance between assistance and independence that he desperately needed. Oliver became a regular presence in the main house, often finishing his lessons and then wandering into whatever room Nathaniel occupied. At first, Grace worried about the intrusion, but Nathaniel never sent the boy away. Instead, something unexpected began to happen. Oliver would sit on the floor near Nathaniel's wheelchair, drawing pictures or building elaborate structures from blocks that Robert had brought from the city. He talked constantly, telling stories about everything and nothing, never seeming to notice or care that Nathaniel rarely responded. The child's presence filled the silent spaces of the mansion with life and laughter that had been absent for far too long. One afternoon, Grace found them in the library, Oliver reading aloud from a picture book while Nathaniel listened with closed eyes. She started to apologize for the interruption, but Nathaniel raised his hand to stop her. He reads well for his age. There was something softer in his voice, a warmth that had not been there before. He loves books. Grace moved closer, watching her son turn the pages with careful reverence. "I take him to the library every Saturday I have free. It is the one thing we can always afford to do together." Nathaniel opened his eyes, looking at Oliver with an expression Grace could not quite name. "My mother used to read to me. Before she got sick, before everything fell apart." He paused, seeming surprised at his own words. "I have not thought about that in years." Oliver looked up from his book, his face serious. "Grace says memories are like treasures. We should keep the good ones safe in our hearts so we can look at them when we are sad. That is very wise advice." Nathaniel's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Grace felt something shift in that moment. Watching these two people who had entered her life so suddenly finding an unexpected connection, the mansion felt less like a workplace and more like something else. Something she was afraid to name because naming it might make it disappear like morning mist. Outside the library windows, the first snow of the season began to fall, covering the gardens in a blanket of white. Inside, in the warm glow of the fireplace, something impossible was beginning to take root. Something that looked remarkably like the beginnings of a family. Winter had turned the Stone estate into a storybook scene. Ice crystals glittered on bare branches, and the pond was frozen solid, a perfect mirror for Oliver to slide across. From the cottage window, Grace watched her son, his laughter a forgotten melody carried on the cold air. 3 months had passed since they arrived at the mansion. 3 months of routines, small victories, and slowly crumbling walls. Nathaniel had even stopped flinching when she entered his room. He smiled more now, especially when Oliver would burst in with some new, urgent discovery. Grace finished preparing breakfast and carried the tray towards the main house, her boots crunching in the fresh snow. The kitchen staff had the day off, and she savored these quiet mornings when the mansion belonged to just the 3 of them. Margaret, the head housekeeper, was visiting her daughter, and Robert, Nathaniel's business manager, was away on a trip. The usual controlled chaos had been replaced by something more intimate, more real. She found Nathaniel in his study, already at his computer, deep in a new project. He looked up as she entered, and the smile that lit his face made her heart do a little flip she tried to ignore. "You didn't need to bring breakfast up here," he said, closing his laptop. "I could have come down." "I know," Grace replied, pouring his coffee just the way he liked it, black with a hint of sugar. "But I thought you might want to work undisturbed. Oliver has lessons until noon, and the house is peaceful." Peaceful is not a word I would have associated with this place before you came. Nathaniel's fingers brushed hers as he took the coffee cup. Before, it was just silent. There's a difference. A blush warmed Grace's cheeks, and she busied herself with the plates. She had become an expert at ignoring the way her pulse sped up when he looked at her like that. The way his presence was filling spaces in her heart she thought were sealed forever. "Victoria's coming for Christmas," Nathaniel said suddenly, watching her reaction. "My sister. I thought you should know. She can be intense." "I look forward to meeting her," Grace said, her professional mask slipping into place. "Should I prepare the guest wing?" Grace, the way he said her name made her pause. She's going to ask questions. "About you, about Oliver, about why I seem different lately. I wanted you to be prepared." "Different how?" she asked, meeting his gaze despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Happier," he said, testing the word. "More like the person I used to be before the accident, before I decided the world was better kept at a distance." The moment hung between them, thick with unspoken words. Nathaniel, come quick." The boy burst into the study, his cheeks flushed from the cold. "Thomas showed me where the deer sleep in the woods and there are babies. Can we go see them, please?" Nathaniel glanced at Grace, a playful light in his eyes. "What do you think, Grace? Should we brave the cold to see some baby deer?" "You hate going outside in winter," she said, surprised. "You always say the cold makes your pain worse." "Maybe I've been hiding inside for too long," he replied, maneuvering his wheelchair toward the door. Oliver danced ahead, buzzing with excitement. "Besides, I have a very persuasive young man telling me about baby deer. How can I refuse?" They bundled up and headed into the gardens. Thomas, the elderly gardener, had cleared a path wide enough for the wheelchair. Oliver ran ahead, then circled back, his enthusiasm infectious. Even the cold seemed less bitter, with his joy warming the air. The deer were exactly where Thomas had said they would be, a doe and 2 spotted fawns, nestled in a protected hollow. They watched from a distance, Oliver whispering questions that Nathaniel answered with surprising knowledge about wildlife. Grace hung back, capturing the moment in her memory. The man who had seemed so broken and angry was now patient and gentle with her son. Her boy, who had known so much uncertainty, was now secure and happy in a way she'd never been able to provide alone. The 3 of them, together in the winter woods, looked like a family of possibility she had stopped believing in. Later that evening, after Oliver was asleep, Grace returned to the main house. She found Nathaniel in the library, staring into the fireplace with a glass of whiskey. "Thank you for today," she said softly from the doorway. "Oliver will remember it forever. So will I." Nathaniel turned his chair to face her. "Grace, I need to tell you something. These past months, having you and Oliver here, it's changed everything. You've changed everything." Her heart began to race. "Nathaniel, please, let me finish." He rolled closer, vulnerability in his eyes. "I know this is complicated. I'm your employer. I'm in a wheelchair. I come with more baggage than a fleet of airplanes. But somewhere between your first day here and today in the woods, I stopped just existing and started living again. That's because of you." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm just the caregiver." "No." His voice was firm but gentle. "You're so much more. No? You're the person who saw past my anger to the man underneath. You re the mother who raised a child so full of light that he shone into all my dark corners. You re the woman I think about when I wake up and the last person on my mind before I sleep." Grace moved closer, kneeling beside his chair so their eyes were level. "Right. I'm scared," she whispered. "I've been alone for so long, protecting Oliver, protecting myself. I don't know how to do this." "Neither do one." Nathaniel reached out, cupping her face with infinite tenderness. "But maybe we can figure it out together. Maybe we can learn to trust that this is real, that second chances actually exist." She leaned into his touch, years of walls crumbling away. Outside, snow blanketed the world in white. Inside, by the warmth of the fire, two broken people found the courage to reach for something whole. When he kissed her, gentle and questioning, she kissed him back with all the hope she had been too afraid to feel. And across the garden, Oliver slept peacefully, dreaming of deer in the woods and a future that finally felt safe and full of possibility. Thanks for listening to this story with me today. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. We'll see you in the next one.